I'm Jennifer Ackerman Haywood from CraftSanity.com, and today I'm going to talk to you about the CraftSanity circular weaving looms. These come in a three loom set, or you could buy them in a 2 loom set. So what I'm going to go over in this video is how to warp the looms and how to get started with weaving and how to take the weaving off the loom. So we're gonna get started. Okay, so the warping method is the same for every single loom. We'll start with, I think we'll go with the biggest one so you can see what we're doing here. For warp, just like I've mentioned in other videos about the bracelet looms, I'm using a rug warp here. This comes in a bunch of different colors. You can get these at weaving supply stores. Also, you can find it online. You can easily find crochet cotton in your local craft store. That's going to work for this too, because you're not going to be walking on most of the things you make on here. So it's going to hold up. It's going to be just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the warping here. And the first thing I do is make a little slip knot, and then I put it over the top star, or some of my looms have a dot at the top and some of them have a star. But right above the S in CraftSanity, there'll be a marking of some kind. Most of them have stars. And then, so as you can see, I'm just connected over that scallop right there, right by the star. I'm gonna bring that yarn back around here. So that's what the back looks like. And I'm bringing my warp thread, and that's what I'm holding here. This is the warp. What we weave with is called the weft. And there's a marking on the loom with a little arrow. And you're gonna go in at the bottom of the arrow and then go behind the scallop and back up, right next to that star. So this is how the back of the loom looks. You're only going around the scallops. You're not going around the whole loom. Now, if you wanted to weave or to warp it all the way around the loom, you could do that too. If you want to weave something on the front, weave something on the back. The only problem is you're not going to really have enough material to finish things off. So that's why I recommend, if you're going to do that, just weave on one side, because you want to be able to have yarn to tie off whatever you do make on this side of the loom. So to continue weaving, I had just gone down here. I'm going to go behind the scallop, and then I'm going to move diagonally across. And so you know if you're doing this right, if you're going across, you want to go back across the way you just came. And I just keep rotating the loom, or you can hold it still and go around like this. However you feel most comfortable. Now, as far as tension goes, your tension should be loose, okay? But not to the point, if it was like just sagging down, like it's staying pretty much in place, it like stays in place. It's not sagging. I can move it though. It's not so tight that I can't move it. The reason why you don't want it to be so tight that you can't move it is because you're gonna be weaving under and over these threads, and you wanna make sure that you're actually gonna be able to do that without a lot of discomfort or without breaking your loom. Because if things were so tense and you're trying to weave, it's gonna be very difficult to weave, and it's also gonna be kind of maddening to weave. It's not gonna be fun. And it's just, you know, gonna put a lot of tension on the loom. And I've never woven so tightly that I broke a loom, but I used to make these kind of weavings when I was a kid using coat hangers. And I would take the coat hanger and try to shape it into as close to a circle as I could get. They usually looked pretty misshapen. And then I would warp them, and I didn't have these little notches, so it was really kind of hard to do. And then I would start weaving, and if my tension was too tight, the loom would continue to kind of be misshapen, and that was bad. So, okay, when we get down to the final part here, some people are like, oh no, I can go around here, but then what do I do? Well, there's an odd number of threads around this loom. We've done that on purpose because we want you to be able to weave in the round, and in order to do that continuously, you need an odd number of threads. So I have gone across the center point. I'm going to kind of come out to the edge of the loom here and cut my yarn off, and I'm going to thread a needle, and then I'm going to use this needle here to secure the warp, and I'm just kind of gonna go just eyeball it and go kind of straight across from where I came from, and then I'm just gonna kind of drop in over here, pull up from the bottom, go across, and what I'm doing is anchoring this in. Okay, I'm just anchoring the center point. Now this would be the time to decide, and if it's not tight enough, what you can do is just kind of back up and pull that tighter. I'm anchoring my center point, but you can anchor your center or this overlap of threads. You can do that off. You can make it intentionally off center if you want to. If you want to go for some kind of artistic dramatic effect there, that's totally fine. The key is just to go around this. I just go to make sure I have everything cut there. And if I see anything that looks like it's kind of twisted down here, I'll go between those threads to kind of straighten things out. And things will straighten out after your first 2 rounds of the loom. Okay, and I'll check things out from the back. It looks like most things are caught up. And then what I'm going to do is just go work the needle underneath where I've wrapped around all those threads, and I'm just going to do a double knot back here. And because I have that tight, it is a little bit of it takes a little effort to get that through, because you do want that to be tight, because this is kind of keeping everything secure. So if this is really loose, your whole warp is going to be floppy. Okay, so I'm not going to cut this piece off because I'm going to start weaving, and I want to secure, I'm going to secure my first color to, I'm going to use this as a point to anchor. Now you have some decisions to make here. You can continue to weave a little bit with the same color, exact same material, and have a gray center, or you can use a contrasting color and kind of get this effect where things kind of, as the weaving's established, you get kind of the spiral look, which can be interesting. You can see there's, anytime you use a contrasting color, this has a very subtle difference. This is a different color here, but not so dramatic that it's the contrast is different than right here. You can decide. This one, I use the exact same color that I warped with to weave a couple passes around. So you can decide what kind of effect you're going for. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to go ahead and use a chunky fabric, or not fabric, I'm going to use a chunky chenille, and I'm going to do that so you can see the pattern establish easily on this video. So normally, well, not normally, I do all different kinds of weaving, but what I often will do is start weaving with a thinner yarn, but you don't have to. It's kind of cool to see what effect you get with using different types of materials. Okay, so I've secured that. One little tip with this chenille, I find that if you try to get it on your needle with from the edge, it starts to kind of fall apart a little bit, so I fold it over and get it on there. Again, use a yarn needle. I try to mention that in all the videos I do about these with the laser cut looms, is you need to use a yarn needle, and don't use something that's really pokey, because that will be uncomfortable to weave. Okay, it doesn't really matter where you come up. You can start anywhere you want. So you just pull the yarn up from the back. And I don't try to weave right here, because as you can see, that's like kind of a mess right there. It's all overlapping, and it's really hard to tell what's what. So I will come up here. I'm going to go over, under, and I start doing establishing my pattern out further away from the center. Okay, so I am away from the center, so I can see what I'm doing. and I'll tighten it up once I get all the way around. And it's quite often that I have to backtrack, where I'll be like, oh, I skipped one, especially if I'm weaving that first pass with the same color. It makes it really difficult to see. So I put on my glasses and I make sure that I'm going slow. And sometimes this will get bunched up. Okay, so I've gone, it's safe to secure this part now down here. Okay, and so I'm gonna keep this edge though, the part where I'm not gonna put it all down in the center because it's really hard to see. So I know I've gone under, I'm gonna go over. And I turn my loom a lot when I'm working on these things, and when I'm making these videos, I kind of realize that, just how much I turn my loom. Do not feel like you have to keep your loom stationary, because that makes it really difficult to weave. So move your loom as you need to. Okay, so I'm kind of coming around. I finished my first pass, and you know you did this right if you come upon where you were and you see that, okay, it was under on the first pass, and you're like, okay, yes, I'm going the opposite. So if you're able to do the opposite of the row before, you know you didn't miss any and things are looking good. And again, it still looks kind of messy. It's the first couple passes are not the easiest. Now, can you start this without having a knot in the center? Yes, you can. I recommend that people who are starting to weave put the knot in the center, and don't try to weave without it, just because it's a little bit tricky when you first get started. And I'm trying to give people tips so they can be successful and not feel really discouraged. So, and okay, so another thing I needed to mention too is I'm pulling things tight, but not like really, really tight. One of the reasons why you don't want to be crazy tight about this is you do not want, if you pull really tight and you're going around and round and round, you're going to create a bowl shape as opposed to a flat shape is if you take it off this loom. Now, some people will weave on the loom and be like, cool, I'm going to leave my weaving on the loom until I get tired of it, and then I'm going to weave something else, but I'm always going to display on the loom. You're free to do that, but personally, I like to weave on my looms and then clear them off for the next project. So, and these looms are intended to be reused. So, as I'm going around here, I'm trying to make sure I'm pushing the yarn up to where it was before, but I'm not going to be wicked tight about it, because if you do that again, it'll have more of a bowl shape than a flat shape. Okay, so you kind of get the idea of this. I'm going to go finish this one, and then we're going to tie a different color on, and I'll show you what to do for that. Now, at any point, you can decide you're going to change colors. You don't have to do a complete. In fact, we don't have to do a complete circle here. I'm going to grab another color real quick. Okay, so you decide you're not going to go any further with this. You can just break it off. This breaks pretty easily. You also can cut it. I keep a scissors on hand just because sometimes the yarn just isn't easy to break. Okay, so I'm going to just swap in for some pink here. As far as length goes, I usually do about an arm's length. If I don't think I'm going to use a lot of it, I'll go shorter. But this, I'm going to have to go around a lot more to get that same amount of space covered, because this is a thinner material. So what I'm going to do here is poke this through to the other side. And I'm going to flip it over. Now, because I'm one of these people that I don't like to waste my yarn, what I'm going to do, well, actually, I'm not going to do that. I would, unless I'm doing a video, I would weave until I'm probably only have that much left. And then I would tie something on because I'm just like, wow, this seems kind of wasteful, but I'll get over that. A lot of yarn coming out of my ears here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just tie this on. Just tie a knot. I'm going to try to get that as close to the surface of the weaving as possible. And then I'm going to take the second color and I'm going to continue weaving. Now I'm showing you how to weave in the round continuously. I do a lot of segmented weaving, and I'll have to do a video in the future on that. Okay, and I'm just going to come up and continue weaving with this pink color. And now using this size loom, you can make a weaving as big as you want all the way up to the edge here. So if you are only looking to invest in one loom, you could get the biggest loom and be able to make things of all sizes. Obviously you're limited on the smaller looms. And because I like to do multiple projects, I like to buy things in sets because I want to have 3 projects going instead of just one. But, you know, you can decide how you want to work. Okay, so come around here and you can kind of see how that starts to look. And then your next row. Now with the pink, you're going to be able to get things closer. And it's going to start to pack in a little bit closer. Again, you want to keep your tension manageable there. You do not want it to be super tight. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears here to look at some weaving that is in progress here. So I'm going to swap out and work on this piece that I kind of liked how this looked on the loom, so I just kind of kept it there for some of my shows as a sample. But today I'm going to use this piece to show you how to take these off the loom. Like I said, you can weave all the way to the edge. I really don't want to on this one, so I'm going to just take this off. And what I'm going to do, now I noticed on some of these weavings I'm weaving clockwise and sometimes I'm weaving counterclockwise. It doesn't matter. There's really no right or wrong way. So what I'm going to do here is I was just weaving under, over, under, over. What I'm going to do, using the same yarn that I was using on the last row so it doesn't show. I mean, you could switch at the last second, but you don't have to. I'm just going to make these little knots around. I'm going to do it fairly loosely, and so what I'm doing is kind of putting a loop, making what appears to be a loop, and I'm going through that, and I'm just going all the way around. And you want to have it so it's tight, but it's not pulling these 2 strings together. You know, they're still going back into place. You know, if I go around, I'm tightening all these like that, that's going to make my weaving take on a whole new shape that I don't want. Because the idea is we want this to be flat. And so I have a choice. I can back this with something. I can back this piece with some fabric and hang it up on the wall, or some people use it as kind of like a coaster if you want to. I kind of like how these look on the wall or on a table. You can use it as something under a little bowl or a vase or something. But I like to be able to see the whole design. But it's really up to you. So I'm just going to do this all the way around. So I made my way to about here and realized I was not going to have enough of my yarn to make it to the starting point here. So what I did is I tied on another yarn that's pretty close and just knotted that together, and I just kept going. So now I'm back where I started. I'm making that last loop across. And the reason why I didn't totally backtrack and make this all perfectly matching and make it look like, oh my gosh, nothing ever goes wrong at the CraftSanity headquarters. I really want to be real for you guys and show you how to improvise if you need to, because I think a lot of videos out there on YouTube and a lot of things on Pinterest show like these really perfect results and don't reveal the struggle that went on behind the scenes. And I just think that's really kind of awful. So I'm going to let you see the struggle here, folks. Okay, so I got all the way around, and I am now back here. Now I'm going to put a backing fabric on this. So this big mess back here, this unsightly part, I'm not going to worry too much about this because this is, and I can trim this down too. Now that the weaving's done, I can trim all that off. And so since I'm going to put a backing fabric on here, I'm going to go ahead and knot these two things together. You really don't have to do that, but I'm like, well, there's an end right there. I'm going to just knot it. And then I'm going to cut the yarn here. Now, if I didn't want that to show and I was going to have the back visible, I could just weave in that tail right through the weaving, just in a way that doesn't show on the front. Okay, so here we are. Or at this point, we have some misfit yarn here on the edge. It's okay. We're going to still soldier on here. Okay, so this is a little bit tricky when you got to get one off. Once you get one of these loops off, everything else will come off. Okay, so I got my first one off. It's a good sign that it's not curling up into a bowl shape right now. And with that tension, you know, even being fairly loose, it does, you know, it kind of wants to stay on the loom a little bit there. So you just kind of work the. Now you can use this with the loops hanging out like that. I don't really like the look of that. Because I left quite a bit of space, I could snip each end here and weave them back into the loom, or I'm sorry, into the weaving. So I could cut each loop and then weave the ends back in. That's a lot of work that I probably won't do on this one because I do want to put the backing fabric on. So I'll show you what I'm going to do instead. And this is on there pretty good. And then you'll get to a point where you can pretty much kind of lift it off. Okay, and as you can see, this piece is flat. It's not curving up into a bowl shape. I mean, it's flat except for this big wad of wool on the back, which I'm gonna try to remedy that a little bit. Now I want to trim it enough. I want to trim it down close to the weaving, but not so much that I cut through the weaving itself. So give it a little haircut there. There we go. Do the same over here. And again, you want to be careful. Don't take too much off, because if you take too much off, it can pop back through. Okay, so we have the only part that's like, the only thing that's kind of keeping it up, you know, preventing it from lying completely flat is the fact that I have some pretty big pieces on the back. But overall, I'm very happy with how this turned out because it's a flat piece of weaving. You could, here's another way I like to display these. You could take a piece of wood and you could pound some nails in, paint a background, pound some nails in, and display it, you know, stretch it back across. That does seem like a whole lot of work. So what a lot of people do, what I like to do, is kind of gather these ends here And then you can take a piece of felt is easy to come by, craft felt. Or actually, I'd go with a wool felt because it won't pill and get all scraggly looking. You can cut a piece a little bit bigger. You also can use wool. Wool would be great. If you have a sweater that you've damaged, you could cut a little piece slightly bigger than your weaving. And if you use very thin fabric, this is going to hold its shape pretty nicely. If you use something that's very, like a very thin yarn, it might not be as apt to hold its shape. You could put a piece of cardboard inside your weaving to give it some interfacing. Might seem a little more high-end to use a stiff interfacing from the fabric store, something that you would use to line a bag, a handbag, or in the bill of a baseball cap. You could use something pretty sturdy, and you could put that in there and then put your backing fabric on. And the way I'm going to connect this is I'm just going to whip stitch around the edge, and I'm going to do it carefully so I'm catching that last row of weaving, but I'm going to do it in a way where I'm putting I'm going to probably catch 2 rows of weaving, so I'm not going to put so much stress on that last row that it's going to pull apart, because I don't want that to happen. So, and I'm going to make little stitches that will be invisible, probably using some thread, sewing thread. I don't think I'm going to use, I wouldn't want to use a thick yarn for this piece. However, if you choose to do that, there's no wrong answer. But these can be really fun, and I just want to show you that it really is possible to get a flat piece of weaving off one of these looms. The real key is, though, as you can see here, this is not real tight in the middle. It's, you know, it's tight enough, but not so crazy, because if you pull really tight, you're going to end up with something that looks like a bowl. And I've had a couple people who have tried this, and they wove really, really tight. They ended up with a bowl shape. They got kind of mad at me. And, you know, obviously I don't want people to have an upsetting experience with my looms. So, so yeah, and you can decide. You can applique this onto something else. This could look really cool on a fiber art wall hanging that has, you know, embroidery and quilted pieces, and then you could add this piece for interest. There's so much you can do with these looms and these pieces of weaving. So I can't wait to see what you guys do. And yeah, I'm kind of excited to see what I end up doing with this, because I really like how it looks off the loom. So, all right, and now come back and do some future videos that show a little more details of some of the projects I do with the weaving off the loom. And I'll have that on my list of future projects. So if you have any questions, you can email Jennifer at craftsanity.com. In the meantime, happy weaving.